This week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayechi, the final Torah portion of the first book of the Torah, that of Genesis, Bereshit. We come to the end of Yaakov Avinu, the great patriarch Jacob of his life. He has given final blessings to his children and grandchildren. He's instructed his family to bury him in the familial plot in Hebron, in the land of Israel. And then in chapter 49, verse 33, Vayachal Yaakov letzavot et banav, and Jacob finished instructing his children. Vayesof raglav el hamita, he gathered his legs to the bed. Vayigva vayeasef el amav, which can be translated as he expired and was brought in to his people. Rashi, the great commentator, notes, picking up on the language of the Talmud, Umita lo nemrubo. Interestingly, the two words that are used in Hebrew, vayigva and vayeasef, to expire and to be gathered in, what the Torah doesn't say is vayamot or vayamat, that he died. Elsewhere, it says it about other people, but not about Jacob. Va'amru Chazal, this leads the sages to say, Yaakov Avinu lo met, that the great patriarch Jacob never died. That's an interesting statement, especially because of what the Torah is going to go on to say happens to Jacob after he dies, namely that there's eulogies for him, and people cry, and his body is lachanot. I'm forgetting the English word for that. He's embalmed. So if he never died, what does it mean to say that he was mourned, they cried for him, they embalmed him, we see later he's buried? What does all of that mean to say that he never died? So there's different answers to this question. And the Gur Aryeh, the Maharal himself, has a lengthy explanation. We're just going to read part of it. Ve'od, yesh bezeh davar nifla v'nelam v'davar ma'er moz im tavin. So there's a wondrous idea here, which I will try to communicate to you if you can understand it, he says. Yadua ki amita hi katse v'sof. What is death? Nice light question. What is death? Death is a final end. It is a final boundary. V'davar she'en lo kitzva, en lo mita. Something which by its very nature is unbounded cannot die. If we're going to define death as having to do with an ultimate boundary, an ultimate delineation, so something which is itself limitless or boundless, death can't apply to that. Umipnei sheYaakov ein mityaches lo katse. Now, Jacob, as is described in Kabbalistic literature, he himself did not have attributes of boundaries or limitations or ends of a spectrum. If you picture a line or a spectrum having ends, Jacob is understood to be in the middle. Ki hakatse hu l'shnei gvulim shehem katse. He says, the Maharal says, an end is when you have two boundaries, something which is bounded, you have ends on the side. Ki kasher taniach gimel nikudot, zu etzel zu, if you put three dots next to each other, ein lenikuda ha'emtzait katse klal. The middle dot doesn't touch the ends. It's purely in the middle. It doesn't have a relationship to the boundaries. Umipnei sheYaakov hu ha'emtzai ben Avraham u'ben Yitzchak v'hu ha'shlishi ha'machriya b'neihem. He says a very interesting thing. This is a mystical Kabbalistic idea that Jacob's father and grandfather, Abraham and Isaac, they represent two ends. And it's known through Kabbalistic literature that Abraham represented chesed, which is one end of the spectrum, that's givingness. Isaac represented gvura, which is more strictness and solidity. That's the other end of the spectrum. And Jacob represents the synthesis between the two. He's in this conception, he's in the middle. He doesn't represent either end, chesed or gvura, but rather tiferet, which is the synthesis, the integration. It means glory between those two outer ends. So therefore, hu keneged nekuda ha'emtzait she'ein mitaches la that should be katsei ugvul. So Jacob therefore represents this middle position, which doesn't have a relation, which can't apply, can't connect to boundaries or endpoints. Lefichach Yaakov Avinu lo met. That's what the sages mean, therefore, when they say that Jacob didn't die. V'davar ze emet ubarur ma'od al pi hachachman. This is well understood according to wisdom. So that's a very interesting Kabbalistic mystical idea, that because we know from that literature, that realm of thought, that Jacob is this character who synthesizes and combines perfectly the ends of the spectrum. He is in the perfect middle of the spectrum, and therefore that perfect middle can't be touched, the normal rules of that which is bounded does not apply, and since death is the ultimate boundary, that does not apply to Jacob. Parshat Shmot yitbe'er od, so he's going to explain more later, based on another idea, that in the book of Isaiah describes in chapter 44, describes Yaakov as Yeshurun. This is a typical description of the Jewish people. Yeshurun means that which is straight, or here he's going to seem to say also that which is totally straight and totally in the middle. It does not lean to other side. Kol davar yosher ein lo katsei. Anything which is purely straight, totally pure in a sense, doesn't lean to either side. Shehakatsei lamisha note min yosher aval yosher ein lo katsei. We would call it as if you're purely straight and true, you don't lean to the side. So he gives an interesting example that the prophet Bilam prays that his own death will be the mot yisharim, the death of the true, the death of the straight. Ratzah lamar, what does Bilam mean to say? Ki b'ma she'em yisharim ein liyashar mita. So far as they're totally on the straight and narrow, they actually don't have a death in the way that we think of it. Be'etzem uvenishmato kayemet la'ad, and their souls in some way will live forever. So that's an interesting proof text he pulls from Bilam, not generally a character that we quote for being positive, but here he tuned into the same notion that which is purely in the middle, the straight and the true, and is not leaning to either side, can never die. And he goes on to develop this theme further, that therefore, that Jacob was really the only human who was able to perfectly be this perfectly integrated character, who perfectly synthesized the ends of the spectrum represented by his father and grandfather, Isaac and Abraham. And he is the only person who really perfected this middle path. The rest of us do not. We lean to one side or the other. So death does apply to us like it does to the vast majority, really every other human in history except for Jacob, according to this rabbinic idea. So take from that what you will. It's a beautiful notion that Jacob alone managed to perfect this middle path. No one else in human history was able to do it, but that does not stop us from trying to perfectly synthesize these various values, whether it's kindness and strength, or the right hand, the left hand, being open-handed and giving, and yet firm and committed. We all try and should continue to try to walk that middle path, though we know that for the rest of us, death is a natural part of our life cycle. For Jacob, in some way, that was not true. Always a pleasure learning with you. More next week.